It's already going, Hartley. You can't just say 1 second in the middle of a countdown.
Oh no.
This is how we start the episode.
Blame Mitchell.
Go ahead.
Mitchell's messaging me, so I can't help it.
I was gonna say, go ahead, read it out loud.
Maybe he's got some great deals posts for us on MacRumors.com, which everyone listening should absolutely immediately take up.
Welcome back to another episode. Guys, we'll just be blunt with you. There's really not a whole lot of like news stuff for Apple, right? You've been involved in the Apple news, this week more than I have. I've been off covering Samsung, which is actually what we're going to talk about. But before everybody groans and like decides they want to turn this episode off, give it a chance. There are some tie-ins with Apple that you might be intrigued by, but like before we jump in, I'm not wrong in the sense that there's really nothing going on right now in the Apple world that's worth talking about.
We're at a peculiar place in the rumor cycle. We always have this every year where we've got a fair bit of distance from WWDC at this point. We know everything about those software updates pretty much. And simultaneously, where there's always so many iPhone rumors, and to a lesser extent Apple Watch rumors, we have a pretty good picture of what is coming in September. So there's not a huge amount at this point that would surprise us about those devices. So really the only unknowns at this point, to some extent, are the end-of-year releases, maybe things like new Macs, potentially even a new Apple TV. But as we know, we're not really expecting any radically redesigned Macs. We're looking at just chip updates. So again, it doesn't make for massively interesting news at this time of year. But as we edge closer to September, things will get more interesting. Public betas as well will also be coming out soon, which I'm sure will generate quite a lot of enthusiasm for those software updates. So there is still stuff coming, but it's just, Apple News, it ebbs and flows. It's just the nature of the game.
And honestly, this week was, really just dominated by Samsung headlines. And again, like I said, it will always come back to Apple in some way because there are some similarities, to put it kindly, in some of these recent devices that were just launched yesterday. I was there in New York. I just got back like an hour ago. And we'll talk about that. But I forgot, there is huge news and related to Apple. Severance Season 2 was officially announced. Don't roll your eyes at me. Don't roll your eyes. For those of you who are a big fan of the show and missed the news, it will finally be coming back on January 17th, 2025. So sorry to disappoint everyone who thought I was going to give a closer date, but it'll give Hartley plenty of time to watch Season 1. But okay, anyways, back to Samsung. Yesterday was Unpacked. I got to play around with most of the devices on Tuesday. We record on Thursday, so just a couple days ago. So it's pretty fresh in my brain, though they don't really give us a whole lot of information about the devices like while we're working on it. I mean, they do. It's just different. Let me just, from a person who covers tech perspective, it's different. Hey guys, just want to take a quick break to let you know that this episode of the MacRumors Show is sponsored by Notion. In case you haven't noticed by now, the entire theme of tech companies over the last year or two has been AI, and we just saw Apple's implementation with Apple Intelligence. Samsung has Galaxy AI, but did you know Notion already has been implementing its Notion AI for quite some time now? And it's actually things that I want to use that makes me get things done faster and more efficiently. Notion is the AI-powered workspace where the everyday everything takes care of itself. Meetings will have summaries, docs find themselves, and every question has an answer. Now, I use Notion here at MacRumors to organize tasks across different editorial departments, media, graphics, the podcast, you name it. I'm using Notion to keep track of it all. I use it on a daily basis while I'm typing up scripts for long-form videos, and then I quickly initiate Notion AI to get a short-form version of it so that I can use it for Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube Shorts. It's super easy. I also use it to fix my spelling and grammar, maybe add a little bit of fluff and color to the scripts that I'm writing so that it's not so bland. I was actually doing a bit of freelance work over the past few months, and the company that I was working for actually used Notion to provide feedback and tasks for me, and it was great. And I wasn't even a part of their workspace, and the seamless experience still carried through. Notion is for everyone. Whether you work for a Fortune 500 company, or you're a freelance designer, or maybe you don't want to use it for work at all, but you want to just organize your life, you can do it with Notion, no problem. So try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/MacRumors. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/MacRumors, and start turning ideas into action. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show, and we greatly appreciate that. So visit notion.com/MacRumors today. Thanks, Notion, for sponsoring this episode. But I do have some of the devices in hand. Let's start with the phones. We can kind of go through those pretty quickly. Obviously, with the Fold and a Flip, both foldable devices, but the Fold obviously folds in, and then the Flip will flip out. A little different form factors there, but Apple doesn't have anything like this. Really, the debate that we have all the time when these phones are released is should Apple do one, and which one? And so we'll bring that back up again, Hartley. Do you still want a foldable device? Let's not be crazy about it and do like, let's just say, do you want an iPhone that is like the Fold or an iPhone that's like the Flip, and why?
Well, I think it's telling really that Samsung have offered both kinds of foldables for so long, because I think they understand that there is actually quite a dramatic difference in how you use those devices. If you go for the smaller Flip, you're not getting a huge amount of use from that outer display. It functions a little bit more like an Apple Watch. Whereas if you go for the standard full-size Fold, you are effectively getting a sort of standard smartphone experience on that outer display. So that's quite a dramatic difference, and that really comes down to preference. If Apple will offer two options, I don't think that's so likely. I think they will go all in on one. But personally, I would like that to be the Flip form factor, just because I prefer that. I don't actually think they will. I think they will go for a larger display, because especially if this device is going to come in at the high end, it's going to sit above probably what will be an Ultra model that is going to be in the lineup starting maybe next year with the iPhone 17. So we'll have an iPhone 17 Ultra above the iPhone 17 Pro and iPhone 17 Pro Max. So further in the future, I don't know, maybe with the iPhone 19 lineup, iPhone 20 lineup, there will be like an iPhone 20 Fold above the iPhone 20 Ultra, depending on timing. So something like that.
I'm not like saying it's never going to happen. I'm just not like holding my breath for it to be anytime soon. So in the meantime, if you're somebody who wants one of these folding devices or flipping devices, you'll have to go Samsung. But I will say good news is they're really good. This year was a little bit of a bummer in the sense that there's not a whole lot of like flashy new things. It was more of a refinement year. There's really not a lot that you can do, at least with the Fold. They made it a little bit thinner, which is good. They made it a little bit bigger on the cover screen. The cover screen is where it can use some work. I still think they're not doing whatever. Like they said that they took some people's consideration, or users' considerations, and made the cover screen a little bit wider because it was like a tall, thin, chunky boy, and it was really hard to like use. And now they made it a little bit wider. It's now 6.3 inches as opposed to 6.1. So yeah, using it, I was testing it out, and it does make it a big difference in terms of typing. But like, there are still other form factors out there that make it a little bit smaller and wider. Like the Pixel Fold comes to mind. That's kind of like the perfect, maybe you could go a little taller if they wanted to, but that's kind of like the perfect sweet spot for the outer display, to where you kind of use your outer display and your inner display, at like a 60-40, I feel like is a good split, or maybe a 70-30 kind of situation. You don't want to be using your inner display all the time. I feel like, at least I wouldn't want to. But you do want it for, like, if I was on the plane, it's large enough to maybe where I wouldn't need to carry a tablet. I would just use that, be able to watch content and then fold it back up and use it for all my daily stuff. With the Flip, I have that actually. That's the one that I did get. And I will say, last year they made like the bigger change with this cover display, made it larger. It takes up most of the space here. but there's still so much functionality that's just kind of left to be desired. And recently Motorola came out with the next generation of its Razr flip phone, and it's very similar to this. And that phone has far more functionality and customization options available for that that outer display, to where it makes it more intriguing. So if Apple does go that route, let's say they listen to Hartley and they take his preference in mind and go with the Flip, the iPhone Flip, or whatever they're going to call it. I really hope that they do something to where it makes the outer screen a little more useful, and it's not just a notification checking machine. Because I feel like there's still things that you can do on here, like you can run full apps on the Motorola Razr if you want to. You probably don't want to do it all the time, but in the instances where you do, I would like to have that option rather than not have it at all.
I agree. I think that really it depends on how that experience is defined and if there are specialist use cases for it. One of the ones that I thought was actually quite cool was this real-time translation with the Flip, where on the outer display, it shows the other person in their language what you are saying in real time. So you could hold that up if you're in a shop or whatever. Ultimately, it's not dramatically different to me just holding my phone to the side, just my normal iPhone. Like, it's not a dramatic difference, but nevertheless, it's those kind of things like where you could prop the camera up facing you or whatever, where it's actually taking advantage of the shape of that device, where it's a little bit more interesting to me.
There's good functionality, but that requires you to still open up the phone and do those things first and then put it in that flex mode, is what they call it. I'm talking from a standpoint of just like, it's on my desk right now. I'm not opening it up. And what can I do with it right then and there? There's not a whole lot compared to some of the other competitors out there that have taken this form factor. It probably sits in the middle of the road. I think honestly, Razr is the one that they should try to achieve, in the final form at least. And then, but like you said, there are features like those are all the Galaxy AI features that came. It was like a lot of software Galaxy AI stuff that came to it. And that is one of the coolest ones. I'm not going to knock the feature. It's great. Like, it works really well. I got to try it out last night. We had a French dinner, and there was a French menu, and we got to do all the circle to search overlay for the translation. Like, these are all super helpful things. But how often on a daily basis are you coming into a situation where you need to use the translator app? It's great that you have it and you can use these translation features, but it's not something that's going to make me want to switch platforms. Or if I was already on Android, it's not going to make me want to switch my phone to necessarily get that. It's all the other stuff that would maybe do it. And I just don't know that we're there yet with some of those things. I don't know. I'm going to be using it for quite some time, and I'll, put my SIM in it, I guess, and do like a iPhone user makes the switch to Android ecosystem, because there is a proper ecosystem. And we'll talk about some of these other things that Samsung announced in a minute. But is there anything else with the Fold and the Flip that caught your attention?
I do think they're beautifully designed.
I
think that the evolution of the design is... With smartphone design, it's always incremental, but it always impresses me how much more satisfying and refined these designs can get, and the added durability and just the slight little changes with the materials and edges and finishes and bezels. It just feels like a more complete experience, which is always nice to see, because although I will not be buying either of these devices.
Sure.
It's very important that the pressure is on Apple to deliver a better device for me this year and next year. And it is these sorts of devices that will apply that pressure.
I have to say, Samsung is class leading when it comes to design for these folding phones and the durability. Obviously, they had issues with the first gen. It's a first gen product. Of course, it's going to have issues. But each year it's gotten better, it's gotten more durable. And if you're out there and you're saying, oh, I don't want a flip phone because I'm worried about breaking it, I feel like you're just not doing your research enough on how much better these phones are. Also, not to mention, you automatically get one repair of your screen. They'll either replace it or fix it for free. So if you were to do something to it, you get that option. So that's great. You just like kind of have that extra peace of mind. It comes with a screen protector already put on it, so you don't have to worry about even trying to remotely do that yourself. And I don't know. And also you get 7 years of updates, which is the other thing that people are like, oh, I'm never going to get, enough updates for me to hold on to a very expensive phone for a long period of time. Well, Google started doing 7 to 8 years worth of updates, and more manufacturers of Android devices are actually promising this. And Samsung said that you're going to get 7 years with either one of these phones. So that puts it pretty much in line with the iPhone, right? Isn't that kind of around the same time frame? So it's no longer like, oh, buy an iPhone, you can use it forever. Now, are those phones going to optimize the software as well in 7 years? And are they going to be still as snappy as, an old iPhone 10 that I could boot up and run iOS 17 on it, or iOS 16? I guess you couldn't run 17 on it. That's kind of a different question, but yeah, I think they're really good phones. And if you're somebody out there who doesn't really care about ecosystem, or maybe you are intrigued enough to want to switch because you want a folding phone, I personally like the Fold more. I just think there are more unique options available to you. But if you're somebody who just wants a smaller form factor, then the Flip is a good option as well. They're both really well done. But if you do make that switch, what about your Apple Watch? What about your AirPods? I mean, what are you going to do? You can't bring those up. Obviously, there are options available. And if you're somebody who likes the Apple Watch Ultra, may I interest you in the new Galaxy Watch Ultra? This is the theme that I've heard over the last couple of days is like the whole meme of copy my homework, but like don't make it too close to what the original is. Like try to change it so we don't get caught. Make a few changes. In terms of the watch, I feel like that's true, even though the name has been basically lifted from the Apple Watch Ultra and the orange accents and the orange band. But like the rest of the watch, there's nothing remotely close to being the same in terms of design. It's the buds that really do look a lot like AirPods, and we'll get on that in just a second. But yeah, your thoughts initially on the on the Galaxy Watch Ultra?
I don't think they're as much the same as people say they are.
Right.
They are positioned the same
Yep.
in their respective lineups. They have similarities because of their location in the lineup, so they have to use more premium, durable materials. They have to offer larger display sizes. This is expected at a higher price point. And obviously the name, and the orange accents.
I mean, it's the name and the orange accents.
But the actual design is significantly different. I mean, it's a round display. It certainly looks a lot brighter on camera. Obviously, I've not seen it in person, but side by side, those displays between the Apple Watch Ultra and the Galaxy Watch Ultra look really quite dramatically different. Mm-hmm. There's more buttons. And also, I just think this is going to be a really... I don't know if I should say this on an Apple-focused podcast, but I think I prefer the design of the Galaxy Watch Ultra.
I agree. It's really nice. I have no allegiance to the Apple Watch. The only reason why I do is because I'm using an iPhone, and that's the only option I have that's going to work really well with it. But in terms of design, I much prefer... That's what a lot of people were saying, and that should be kind of eye-opening to Apple, is that a lot of people that primarily use iPhones that were covering the event alongside me were saying that they enjoyed... I haven't opened this yet, by the way, but I have used it over the last couple days from some of the ones that were on display there. They prefer this one. And the screen is incredibly bright. It's almost too bright, let's be honest. There are so many high-end features that you get. I know Samsung poked fun at being able to have blood oxygen, but it has blood oxygen. It's even got sleep apnea detection, which is something that has been rumored for the next generation Apple Watch, right?
Yeah, so they've effectively beaten Apple to release this feature. Mm-hmm. And the blood oxygen aspect that you mentioned is crucial because it looks like we don't actually know if sleep apnea is going to make it to the next Apple Watch. And that's not because the technology isn't ready. Samsung's able to do it. The issue is sleep apnea detection depends on blood oxygen detection. Mm-hmm. So Apple needs to find a way around that, either by getting past this dispute with Massimo, or by arguing that because it's not directly a blood oxygen feature, it's leveraging blood oxygen detection to deliver a different kind of health monitoring feature, that is somehow permissible in this particular dispute. So we will see, but fair play to Samsung for coming out with this feature first. It's always good to see new health features, especially at a time when I think that perhaps they've slowed a little bit in the smartwatch space, where I feel like when the Apple Watch was introduced, and in the first few years when smartwatches were really exploding, we kind of believed that we would be getting new health features every year, every other year. But I do feel like they've stalled and slowed, and the blood oxygen situation has not helped with that. And also, I don't know how useful this stuff is. I mean, blood oxygen detection per se is not massively useful to me. Whereas something like sleep apnea detection, it's not that that's useful to me, but it's a more interesting thing to have sort of monitored and to be told if I am at risk of that thing. The same goes for hypertension detection, which is also in question whether the next Apple Watch will actually be able to deliver that. But if it can, that is a step in the right direction of sort of peripheral, gentle health monitoring tools that don't just exist to tell you a metric, because we can all open the health app on our iPhones and see loads of information, but how does that actually translate to anything useful? And if my smartwatch is able to specifically tell me you have an irregular heart rhythm, you have a high chance of having sleep apnea, whatever it may be, that is different and useful in a different way to just saying, here's some metrics for you that might be interesting. I mean, that's actually my issue with sleep detection or sleep monitoring rather on the Apple Watch. I mean, you can tell me I had a bad night's sleep. I know I had a bad night's sleep because it was me. But it's not really particularly useful to just tell me, okay, you had 7.5 hours of sleep last night.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to circle back to like the whole thing about smartwatches, and like Apple Watch is still probably it's definitely going to be the most popular one out there, but in terms of the rest of the landscape for smartwatches, it's definitely not as wide of a gap as like tablets. iPad kind of dominates, and there aren't that many good alternatives, but there are lots of really good Android specific Wear OS based smartwatches that have plenty of good features, just if not the same ones that Apple offers or more, and they're totally fine. It's just going to be a matter of what phone you're using and obviously the software. But like I honestly do really prefer the look and feel of this. It is a little bit thicker, I will say. It's a thick one, and it is kind of strange because it's like, yeah, it's a circular face, but it's not a true circle with that outer portion of it. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like they squared off the circle. It's a squircle, as some would call it. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I do love the orange accents, although it is a little bit copying, but is what it is. What do you think of like the size of it? It is 47 millimeters, but it does feel pretty massive.
To me, they are a little bit too big. That's why I don't have an Apple Watch Ultra. But I'm pleased that this device exists for people in that ecosystem. And again, it puts pressure on Apple to deliver sleep apnea for us because Samsung has beaten them. Yeah.
In terms of features, it's kind of like the same as the Apple Watch Ultra. You got the 10 ATM water resistance, titanium grade 4 frame. It can go from 5,000 meters to below sea level to 9,000 meters for high advanced tracking in the ocean for swimming. That seems crazy. 9,000 meters high. Okay, that seems like a lot, does it not? That seems pretty crazy. I'm not going to test that, so don't even bother trying to ask for me to do a comparison on the swimming part. I don't feel like drowning. But yeah, I mean, it's got all the features that one would want, and it's in that rugged but still premium style, and I do appreciate that. It's just, the name and the orange accents really threw everybody for a loop, especially if you were a, quote, Samsung hater. That just gave you some ammunition there. But I don't really see it. Now, the Buds, the Galaxy Buds 3 and the 3 Pro, I don't have the white one. If I had the white versions of either one, I think that would really drive home like the point. But you should go look it up if you don't know what it looks like. But otherwise, I mean, it really is just, these are just AirPods with a different stem. Well, these are the Pro versions, so they kind of have this like blade stem. It's a very weird shape. It works, but it's not like round like what you'd get with the AirPods. There's a LED light, so Samsung was very hyped on talking about the LED lights on them. They're fine. I don't know that I would be like, oh, that's a selling point for me. It's nice if you like lose them, you can activate Find My and it'll kind of flash the light. That's pretty useful. But I mean, most of the time people lose, I guess you could lose one earbud and it would be, you know, something that would be useful if you like dropped it under the couch or something, taking it out of your ear. But yeah, I mean, that's really all it's used for, and letting you know that you're pairing something, whether letting you know whether they're on or off, I guess. You can't change the color of them. They're kind of what they are. What were your thoughts when you saw the design of these? And did you think these were a lot more like the AirPods and the AirPods Pro?
Yeah, I think they are a little bit closer.
Yeah.
I will say I don't like that metallic finish.
I don't either. I think I prefer, and which is weird because I was complaining about like, I want different color AirPods. And then I'm like, oh yeah, if I'm looking at these two, I think I like the white ones more. But I don't hate it. I think I would have preferred them to just be black and not like this weird metallic look.
Yeah, it's because they're not. They're just still plastic, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're not metal.
So I don't know. It just looks kind of cheap to me.
It does. I could see that.
Which is a shame at that price point. And also, I think we're a little bit biased now because AirPods are so iconic, and we're so used to them that the whole wireless earbuds industry has kind of revolved around Apple here. And I think this is a really clear example of that. I will say the one feature that stands out to me across both of these Buds 3 options is that both feature active noise cancellation.
Yep.
Whether they have silicone ear tips or not. The reason why that's interesting to me as someone in the Apple rumor space is that is precisely what we are expecting from the next generation standard AirPods. So even though they don't have silicone ear tips, they will feature active noise cancellation. Of course, it won't be as good as on the AirPods Pro, but it will still have that feature. So effectively, Samsung has again kind of stolen that thunder and has provided that feature set now. And it may be a little while before Apple does that.
Yeah. It's funny. I wanted to like pull up the list of features because in the briefing that we had before we like got to mess around with them, we were all kind of thinking like, well, what is the biggest difference then between the pros and the non-pros? And I mean, if you're really trying to save money, they do sound a lot better. I mean, not a lot better, but they sound better for sure. You can definitely notice it. There is a dual amp and an enhanced two-way speaker. That's kind of the biggest differences in terms of sound quality. But then you have adaptive noise control. So kind of that on the go, on the fly adjustments for your ANC and for transparency. You don't get that with the regular ones, and you don't get the lights, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, they are pretty much the same. Oh, and the tips. One's tips like the AirPods Pro versus the regular AirPods, and the other one's not. So if you don't like the AirPods, like the in-ear tips that go pretty far into the ear, then you might want to get the other one, and you'll sleep tight knowing that they're still going to sound good. And you're not missing out on a whole lot of crazy features, and you still get noise cancellation, like Hartley said. I do want to say I am making a video on these very soon, could be tomorrow. And I've been using them the entire time I got them. So yesterday I used them on the plane. While I don't think that I think the noise cancellation is there, transparency is much better than most of the other non-Apple headphones that I've tried. I still think Apple might win those a little bit in that department. But in terms of sound quality, like These things are really, really good. I honestly think I might like them better. They fit exactly the same in my ears as AirPods Pro, so I love that. There's no like learning curve for your ears. So if you switch from one to the other, your ears are like, oh, hey, this feels like the one that you just wore. Very comfortable. Obviously, you get the adjustable tips in the box. I was very impressed. And if you have a Samsung device like the new Flipper Fold, you can turn on. It has the LDAC in there, so you can turn on high quality audio in the app. And that's the other thing, is kind of a bummer. The app for the Galaxy Buds in on a Samsung device is really good. There's so many options and things that you can turn on, and it really is exactly like what you would get with AirPods in terms of the experience and the features that you get. And there's so many more additional features, adjustable EQ, all of that. And you don't get that if you were to use it with your iPhone. So it's really hard for me to recommend that to an iPhone user. But they're also $249 and they sound really, really good. $179 for the regular version, and those sound just as good. Well, not just as good. I gotta stop saying that. They're there for most people, but I think once you turn on the high quality audio and you really get that dual amp experience, and you can definitely tell. But I was very impressed, and honestly, I think they're probably one of the best earbuds that I've tried so far that are not AirPods, for sure.
Yeah.
I know it's hard for you to jump in and say one way or another because you haven't tried it, but, you know, would you ever consider trying other things that are not AirPods, or are you just, because you're stuck to the ecosystem, that you can't?
Yeah. I mean, I would have Beats headphones because it provides that AirPods-like experience.
That doesn't count.
And maybe I would potentially, after our AirPods Max rant last week, I maybe would go for some different high-end over-ear headphones. But when it comes to in-ear earbuds, to me, there is no better option than AirPods. And I don't think that is a purely tribal thing. I think that the experience is so refined. I mean, even when I think of my AirPods and I disregard the pairing experience, I use it on MagSafe chargers. I use it with my Apple Watch charger. I use it with Find My. I use it with spatial audio. I use Siri as well. I very much enjoy the swipe-based volume controls. So
you get those. You get that on here.
Okay, one feature.
You get so there's a lot of. I mean, you're not going to get Siri, but you can. I think you can get Gemini. So that's probably better right now. But in terms of like some of the features that you won't miss out on, you do get that one-touch pairing, and it does go across the ecosystem. However, you have to be a part of Android ecosystem there. So if you were to like make the switch, Hartley, let's just say you decided to make the switch and go full-blown Samsung. I don't know that your experience across most of these devices are going to be different in the sense of like I had that on my iPhone, I don't have that on here. I don't think there's going to be a lot of that. I think it's going to be a lot of, I had that on my iPhone and I have it here. I just don't know if I like the way that works here, or you're just not used to it. But you still get a lot of those features. The controls are the same, and you can customize the controls, which is nice. You can do the swiping for the volume, which is always good. You can have an interpreter feature, by the way. We were talking about that on the phone. You can get that on your buds. So it's obviously not a two-way conversation kind of thing, because you don't have the person to be able to see what you're saying on your end, but you basically put it into conversation mode. So if somebody's talking to you, that will at least auto translate into your ears, and you can kind of get an idea of what they're saying. So maybe you're on like a tour guide in a different country, or you're on a tour with a tour guide in a different country, and you're just meant to sit there and listen and not engage. That is something you can do. Put your headphones on and it will automatically translate what that person is saying, which is really, really cool. Again, you're just not going to get any of these features if you have an iPhone and plan to use them. So again, it's really hard for me to say which one's better in that regard for you, but I can try to strip all of that and just go for like a sound standpoint and some of the other features like ANC and transparency. And I will have all of that very, very soon. So subscribe to the channel if you're interested. Last but not least, we got the Galaxy Ring. Now, this is a different thing to talk about because, Apple doesn't have a ring but I feel like they definitely should get into this market. I think it's exploding more and more each and every year. I know more people asking me whether they should buy an Aura Ring, or even Ultra Human is kind of a new brand that popped up over the last year that has a ring similar with features. And now Samsung, a major player, a major brand that people know, besides, you know, Aura making a name for itself in that space, but nobody knew what it was before. Samsung has done a bunch of different products. They now have a ring. And I'm sitting here thinking, when is Apple going to do a ring, if at all? And you might be thinking, why would anyone need a ring? And Hartley, you would say, what would your answer be?
Well, if I don't want to wear a smartwatch, then...
Boom. Exactly. Thank you. That's common, but people, you know, they still ask that question. And I'm like, well, it's a pretty obvious answer. It can do all of the things that your smartwatch can do for the most part in terms of health tracking and features. And it's in a much more discreet location, easier to wear and get around with, definitely easier to sleep with, in my opinion, than having a big watch on your hand, or I mean on your wrist. So yeah, your thoughts on the Galaxy Ring, and should Apple make one of their own, the Apple Ring?
I like that it exists.
Okay.
But if I think about if I would like Apple to make one, probably not. Because I think that ultimately they're still bulky, and I don't think they're sufficiently refined compared to what you can put around your wrist, and the amount of data that you can leverage from your wrist. And I always feel like something that's actually on your fingers is way more prominent. You're going to be far more aware of it than something that's on your wrist that you can just forget about. Now, that's not to say that Apple Watch should be the only option. I would love Apple to come out with a kind of fitness band that will do effectively all of the health tracking, health and activity tracking, but with no app ecosystem. I wouldn't even mind if it didn't have a display on it, really. I just want that integration with Apple Health. There are competitors in this space. I mean, Fitbit was obviously a huge one for years. More recently, things like Whoop as well, and that is really popular now. I'm very attracted to those kinds of trackers because you don't always want to have a large device with a display, and there is still a lot of interest in mechanical watches. I don't think that's going anywhere. And if you are one of those people, you still want to close your rings. You still want to be engaged with your health and fitness. And it would be really nice to have some sort of option for that. Unfortunately, I don't think that's how Apple works. Apple tends to provide one option, maybe a couple of screen sizes, but that's it. That's why, to go back to what we were saying earlier, in terms of if they ever made a foldable phone, they're going to just make one kind of foldable phone, because that's just the way they do things. They may offer that in a cheaper format. So say we've got the Apple Watch and the Apple Watch SE, we've got the stainless steel Apple Watches, but basically they're all the same kind of thing. They're not dramatically different form factors. To some extent, the iPad is the same. We've not got all these, although we say that the iPad lineup is really big and massively varied, ultimately it isn't really. These are very similar devices. They all work with keyboards. They've got a couple of different screen sizes. They all do the same thing. We haven't got foldable ones yet. We haven't got some with displays on both sides, and we haven't got a huge 16-inch model that's dockable in some speaker or whatever. Apple doesn't do this. So I don't think they will ever actually provide a ring, and I don't think they will ever provide a fitness band. But I don't know, maybe Vision Pro is the only reason why maybe they one day would, if there was some benefits to having, say, an Apple Watch on one wrist and a ring on the other hand, and it provided some additional tracking. I don't know.
I feel like there's plenty of opportunities, almost too many things for it to make sense that Apple should make one. But I don't know that they ever will. But I personally would love one, and it's for many reasons. One, like you said, I don't always want to wear a watch, especially if I was to go out and, you know, maybe go to the gym or whatever. If I could just like figure out a way, and if maybe it's like, you know, you long press and it's by default like gonna go into workout mode, or maybe it doesn't need to and it has AI built in somehow. I don't know if they can do that in such a small form factor, but some sort of learning presence to be like, okay, you're probably running, you're probably lifting, or whatever the case may be. If you can set that, or maybe you set it in your phone, I don't know, but I want some way to be able to track my health and not have to always wear a watch. If I, there's always that joke of like, oh, I went to the gym, I forgot my watch. Like, did I even work out that day? If you didn't close your rings, like, it's a joke. Obviously you did, but like, there is something to be said about seeing that progress. And if you don't do it, and if you forget it, it's going to be kind of a bummer. And so like having that ring, that discrete option, is something that I do really like having. I have the Aura, I have the Ultra Human. I use them for sleep tracking. I think it's great because I don't want to sleep with a watch on. They don't recommend putting it. They will always say to put it on like your pointer finger, but you can wear it on your ring finger, and so that's what I do because I don't want to wear multiple rings. And I've had no real issues in terms of tracking. Everything seems to kind of be in line with what I would get on my watch, or if I have something on my bed that also tracks stuff like that. The only thing that bums me out is it doesn't integrate with Apple Health in the way that you would want it to, like your Apple Watch. Also, there are rings out there that used to be with like an NFC chip that would do other things. Like one was unlocking your Tesla. It was used as a key. Like think about a key from Apple that had the car key enablement on it. And that was somehow hopefully becoming more popular in vehicles where you could just use your key, bring it up, you tap it, or with Home Key and you can tap your ring instead of a watch. Like there are things that it can do. And just the overall benefit is having that smaller form factor again. So I would love for it to be something that Apple makes, but I just don't know.
There is also an additional benefit, which is if you wear both some sort of smart ring and a smartwatch, you have now got 2 data points.
Sure. Yeah.
So if both perform temperature detection, your actual temperature readings are going to be far more accurate. Your sleep tracking is going to be far more accurate. All of these things will be more accurate. So I think long term, whether Apple makes a ring or not, I think the direction of travel here is to sort of gather health data in the background. And I think that where we actually will see it from Apple in the long term is not some sort of wrist fitness tracker or a smart ring. I think where we'll actually see it from Apple is AirPods and the Vision lineup. The Vision lineup is in Vision OS 2 already getting HealthKit integration. You can absolutely see a situation in 10 years where Vision Pro has some eye health features, but maybe also some basic activity features as well. And then you tie that in with your AirPods, which may be able to do temperature detection, heart rate detection.
Yeah,
so maybe if you're not wearing your watch, you've got your AirPods in. For whatever you're using, something should be able to pick that data up. And if you're wearing it all together, you should get a far more accurate picture. So I still think Apple has an idea of where this is going in the same way that I think Samsung does. But I think the devices that they will do this with are different.
This is why ecosystems exist. Get all the data that you can to make, hopefully they're using it for the betterment of your user experience and not for other nefarious things. But you would want to gather as much data as you can about that person to make those things more accurate. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I'm not saying I want an Apple ring so that I can replace, like, I'm literally wearing a smart ring right now with my Apple Watch. Like, it's not going to replace one per se, but in certain situations, one device would replace the other. And vice versa. Like I might want my watch for some, I might want the ring, or I might need both. And so I like that Samsung went in that. I think it kind of pushes other major brands to maybe look at doing the same thing, and more competition is nice. The Ultra Human ring is good. Battery life, not my favorite. Aura is pretty good. Battery life is still questionable. This promises a week of battery. I have not gotten a week of battery on most of the rings that I've used, so I would love that. If we can get something more than that, that would be great. And I just think that there's plenty of opportunities to integrate within your ecosystem and within the health data. And so I'm on board, but who knows if that's ever going to happen. But kudos to Samsung. They're branching out a little more and adding in a new product. And so that was officially launched. And speaking of, I don't know, we didn't talk about this beforehand, and I didn't even know this was going to happen. And it was very brief. I don't think you watched the keynote. And if you did, please stop and correct me. But I'm guessing you did not watch the keynote yesterday. Okay, that's fine. It was only one person's job at that time, and that was me. So at the end, they said something when they had their little powwow with Google on stage about their partnership, that later on this year they'll talk about more of their venture into XR, which was interesting. I'm guessing they're doing some sort of, just judging by the name, some sort of reality. So whether it's augmented or virtual or both, like the Apple Vision Pro, it's interesting to see that Google and Samsung are partnering up for that potentially, and we'll get more information maybe even next month when Google releases the Pixel 9 and 9 Pro. There's an event. This is happening earlier than normal. Maybe they're going to talk about that a little more. So I'm intrigued. Did you catch anything? Did anyone even talk about that? I kind of did not. Yeah. Okay. So
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, they literally mentioned it very, very briefly, and I feel like no one was talking about that. Maybe I was a little delirious from lack of sleep, and I am making things a bigger deal than what they were. But I felt like I did not see a lot of tweets. I was off social media a lot too, but I feel like I didn't hear a lot about it, and people there didn't gasp or make any kind. There was no chatter after that. It was still very quiet. It was at the very end though, so I don't know if everybody checked out at that point or what. But yeah. They said something about XR and that new platform, and that they're partnering on that, and they'll talk more about it later in the year. And I just was completely caught off guard by that. So what would that look like to everyone? What do you think that could be? A Vision Pro competitor?
I think that we've heard rumors for, I feel like about a year now, about Samsung moving into this space. Google investing very heavily, obviously Microsoft investing very heavily, but we haven't really seen a direct competitor to Vision Pro come out. We've seen Meta kind of change orientation a little bit around Vision Pro, most recently by adding Vision Pro-like window management to the MetaQuest headsets. But we haven't actually seen a manufacturer say, or not say, but clearly position something, a new product, as a competitor to Vision Pro. But maybe Vision Pro's too low volume of a product. Maybe they'll come in at a lower price point. Who knows? But I think it's inevitable by the time that Apple releases this low-cost Vision headset, which should theoretically happen at the end of next year. And by low cost, I mean around $1,500. Maybe that is what Google is targeting. Maybe that is what Samsung is targeting, is that sort of device. And if we get an Android platform for those kind of spatial experiences, to me, that would make sense that maybe we would hear about that sometime soon, knowing how these companies do things a little bit differently to how Apple does.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to confirm one thing is that when I say I felt like no one was talking about it, obviously outlets did post some articles, just a quick Google search will say, but it's not the same amount of buzz. When I did go on Twitter, you would all of my feed would be all about it. People would be talking about it. There'd be speculation. I just did not get a sense of any of that. But there are some things covering it, and it does appear that there's going to be some sort of something scheduled for a XR platform and a headset coming later this year. And some are even thinking maybe the Samsung Developer Conference on October 3rd could be a good place to showcase that new platform. So anyways, sorry for the whole Samsung episode, but when they release good stuff, we got to give them credit. And it does pop a conversation off of does Apple need to change some things? Should their plans change? Should they be taking some of the design elements and slightly tweaking and borrowing and implementing it into their strategy for products? Let us know in the comments what you think. And of course, we'll catch everyone in the next. Hopefully there's more Apple news that we can talk about next week. Hartley, what do you think?
There's always something. Always something.
Yeah, well, just not this week, but in the future. Yep. There just wasn't this week. But yeah, next week that'll be the one.
Well, next week I will have been using Vision Pro for a week.
Wait, did you get it? It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, that's all right. Cool. We do have something to talk about. Hartley's take on Vision Pro and probably something else. But we'll save that for next week, and we'll catch everybody in the next episode.